Hello and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to be doing a product deep dive on the Jira connector for Jira. Actually, we're going to look at Jira, Azure DevOps, and ServiceNow connector for SAP Transport Management. We'll come back and talk about why that's important. For now, please note that we'll be answering questions at the end of today's discussion. So if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat. We'll be sending a recording for everybody that registered for today's event, so you can watch your email for that. And let's get going. So as I said, today we'll do a product deep dive on SAP Transport Management using Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, and Jira. Why is that important? Well, many companies are using Azure DevOps, Jira, ServiceNow to manage their changes across their enterprise. Of course, when you're managing changes for SAP, there's a need to also deal with transports on the SAP side. And often that's a very disconnected process. Some people are using Charm from Solution Manager. Cloud ALM is now available and has some transport management capabilities. But if you want to manage directly from Jira and ServiceNow or Azure DevOps, we have that ability to do that today. So that helps to streamline the process. So to discuss today's topic, I'm going to be introducing Sajith Kanath. Sajith is an ALM architect here at Core ALM. He leads our product development team, and he's been involved in implementations of our solutions at some of SAP's biggest customers, including Bayer, Kyndryl, and QVC. Welcome, Sajith.
Thanks, Steve. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Happy to be here.
All right, before we get going, I'm just going to kick off with some slides to walk through a little bit of background on who we are at Core ALM, and then we'll get into today's demonstration. Okay, so we have been in business for about 14 years. The company was founded when our CEO and founder actually left his position as the head of the ALM practice at SAP. At the time, there was no firm that was out there that was focused on application lifecycle management services and tools specifically for SAP customers. And so he saw that gap in the marketplace and decided to found Core ALM to fill that gap. Of course, given his connections at SAP, was able to serve some of SAP's largest customers right out of the gate, providing services in the application lifecycle management space. And it was about 2018 when he noticed that many of our customers were actually using other tools to manage their application lifecycle management for non-SAP applications. Like I said, Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow. And for those other applications, wanted to provide the ability to use, at the time, the best-in-class capabilities from SAP to manage application lifecycle management with Solution Manager. And decided that there was an opportunity to build integrations between Solution Manager components and those other tools to allow for a more seamless integration and to get the best of both worlds. So that started in about 2018. We've been developing connectors since that time to the applications that I mentioned and many others. And at this stage, we have some of SAP's biggest customers running on our platform. Many of these customers have been using our services as well as our tools and have them deployed in high intensity environments, including regulated environments for life sciences type applications or aerospace and defense, and putting very large volumes of transactions through the tool. We cover all aspects of the application lifecycle management process. So whether you're doing an SAP implementation right now, or whether you're in ongoing maintenance and support mode, we can help you across all of those aspects, and we cover every part of it. So from planning, requirements management, traceability, the sprint planning that comes with doing a build, testing, including test orchestration, test automation using tools like Tricentis Tosca and other applications, release management, which we'll be talking about today with transport management, Charm, or any of the other tools, and then monitoring to make sure that your applications are technically and business-wise staying up and accomplishing what they need to in order to make you successful. The SAP platform typically includes either Cloud ALM or Solution Manager from an application lifecycle management perspective, But there are some gaps, especially if you're using Jira, Azure DevOps, ServiceNow, or some of those other tools. Sometimes that means that you're going to have multiple applications that users have to use in order to manage their changes. That ends up with data inconsistencies because people are using multiple different applications. Also causes obviously duplication of effort, and it sort of lacks the automation and seamless integration that you would hope for. That's really the idea behind our connectors. We have connectors for Cloud ALM as well as connectors for Solution Manager. And as we'll be talking about today, we have connectors that are directly to SAP Transport Management, which allow you to take advantage of SAP Transport Management tools directly from the application of your choice. So this gives you a list of the products that we have in the different spaces of Solution Manager, Cloud ALM, and then direct connections from transport management from those tools that I mentioned, which we'll be covering today. So I'm excited to introduce today Sajith Kanaf. So Sajith, please join me, and I will switch things over so you can share your screen.
Sure, Steve. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. Please let me know once the screen is visible.
You are good.
Okay. So let me switch to full screen.
Thank you.
Hope it is visible.
You're good. Yeah.
Okay. So hello, everyone. As Steve mentioned in the introduction, we are going to have a demo on our connector for SAP Transport Management, using which you can manage the transports in SAP environment from Jira, ServiceNow, and Azure DevOps, so different third-party applications. So before we go to the live demo, we'll go through a few slides which will give you a high-level overview of the features and how the connector works. So here are some of the features or options in the connector. So it's a direct integration between the third-party application and SAP Transport Management, or STMS. There is no middleware, there is no additional servers or anything in between. It's a direct connection between the third-party system and SAP system. So you don't need to have Solution Manager or Charm for this integration to work. It's a direct integration with the TMS. Using this connector, you can create transport request, release, and import the transport request in the managed system or from the development environment directly to the quality, test, and production environments. And it also supports multiple multi-tier landscapes. If you have 4-system landscape or 3-system landscape, that's also supported. It also supports, like in Charm, the creation of transport of copies, wherein when you have a development which is not complete, you can still have the testing using creation of transport of copies like in Charm, and you can go back and add additional tasks and create new transport of copies before you release the original transport request. So as an advanced feature, similar to what we have in Charm, we also support cross-system object lock and downgrade protection to ensure that so there is no object overwriting or your version is maintained up to date using this connector. We also have a coupling decoupling option, which means if you already have a transport request and if you want to couple it with any of the Jira entity or a ServiceNow change, that option is also available. And you can have the mapping based on the statuses in Jira or ServiceNow, which means when a status is changed in ServiceNow or in Jira, you can have a corresponding action done on the TMS side, which means when you select a transport request, if you want to create a transport request, you can just move the change to in development, which will create a transport request. And when you move it to in testing, it's going to import the transport request to the test environment and so on. So you can customize this mapping. And we also support mass import of transport requests. Suppose if you have a release, you can select and import multiple transports at once into the target environment. And we provide, as a deployment option, we provide multiple 2 options mainly for the deployment. So this is applicable for both Jira, ServiceNow, and also for Azure DevOps. The first one is a standalone mode, which means in which Jira will be continuously communicating directly with with the development system in the landscape. For example, if you have ECC, S4HANA, BW, multiple landscapes in the environment, Jira will be directly communicating with each of the development environments. This is a standalone mode. Where we are also supporting a centralized mode, wherein you can have a central NetWeaver system which Jira will be directly communicating to, and this NetWeaver system will be connecting to the other development systems in the landscape. Here we'll be using RFC connections from the central NetWeaver system, and Jira need not have a direct connection to the other systems in the landscape. So that's a centralized mode. Here all the connections are diverted through the existing NetWeaver instance. So you don't need to have a separate NetWeaver instance for this. We can make use of any of the existing systems in your landscape or even solution manager, but you don't need to have anything configured in there. And on the Jira side, you need to, so we are providing a plugin which can be imported into the deployed into the Jira instance. And once you deploy the plugin, you will be seeing the connector plugin in there for the TMS. And we will be, so as part of the plugin, there will be an additional tab within Jira for the particular project, which is integrated with Solution Manager. Within the tab, you'll be seeing the options to create transport request and the coupling of transport request import. As you see in the screenshot here, you'll have all the options on the click of a button. So once you click on create TR, it will give you a pop-up wherein you can enter the details of the transport request to be created in the target environment. So if this particular issue is not related to TMS, or if you do not want to have this integrated TMS, this will be this tab will not be visible to the users. And as I mentioned, we have multiple options for the status mapping, mass import, and so on. So this is a screenshot from our plugin. So you can select the Jira project and what the issue type you want to integrate with TMS. And you can also select the corresponding landscape in which you create the transport request. And this is the status and the corresponding action for the transport request. So for example, in selected for development, you'll have the option to create a transport request. When it is moved to in progress, you'll have the option to create and import a transport of copy. In testing, we'll have the option for releasing a TR and so on. So this is completely customizable. So if you switch to edit mode, you'll have the option to select from the drop-down which action is needed against which status. You also have a logging option wherein the calls from Jira to SAP will be logged, and in case of any failure, you'll also be able to do the reprocessing from here itself. And we have been talking about Jira connector for TMS, and here comes the ServiceNow connector. The functionality is the same. We have all the functionalities which we discussed available in Jira, ServiceNow, and also in Azure DevOps. So this is the ServiceNow change layout screen, wherein you have SAP change option field. This is a custom field. So the integration will be enabled only when, say, you set the value to yes. So once you set this field value to yes, you'll be seeing a custom tab in here, which is called SAP Transport, similar to Jira. And within that, you'll have the options for creating the transport request task, and based on the mapping, you'll also be seeing additional options like release transport request, import transport request, and so on. And all the transport request details will be available within the tab. And if this is a non-SAP change, this value can be set to no, which means this SAP Transport tab will also be not visible for that particular change request. And here comes similar to what we have in ServiceNow and Jira. This is for the Azure DevOps. This Azure DevOps work item layout. Here also you have the SAP Transport tab, under which you'll have the options create transport task, create and import TOC. All these options are available within Azure DevOps also, and the transport request details will be visible within the same tab. So if you have any questions on this, please mention that in the chat here, and after we'll go with the live demo now, after which we'll be able to answer the questions. So at first, what we'll do is we'll go to the Jira integration. Here is our connector, which will be deployed into your Jira instance. Just reload this, our Jira demo instance. And once you deploy the connector, you'll be able to see it in the list, applications list. And here you have the connectivity, wherein you can add different landscapes in your environment. So we have added multiple landscapes in here, and within each landscape, if you depending on how many systems you have, you can add those systems. So here we have development, test, and production, and you need to maintain the connectivity details to that particular instance. So here we are using a centralized system approach, and this is the connection to the central system. From here, you will also be able to do the connection test. And if you want to make any changes to the environment, you can switch to edit mode and make necessary changes and update it. And once you define the landscapes and the corresponding systems, the next step is to define the mapping. So within the mapping page, select the project you want to do the mapping and the corresponding issue type in Jira. And here you will have all the landscapes available. It's also possible to select multiple landscapes, which means against the same Jira project, you can have multiple landscapes mapped, one is to one mapping. So here we have one landscape map to this particular Jira project for the issue type story. And in this mapping, you will have the create TR option once it is set to once the issue is set to selected for development. And once it is set to in progress, you'll have the TOC creation option. In testing, we'll have the release option, and so on. And at any point in time, you can switch to edit mode and make changes to this mapping. Then we have the mass import option, wherein you can select the Jira project, and we have multiple filter options for the issues. And based on the search, so you can just select based on different fields, priority, summary. So you have multiple search options, and you can also select which is the last imported system and do a search. And so then you will get the list of transport requests, and you can select those transport requests and select it for the mass import into the target environment. So it's going to take a bit longer because I didn't give any values in the search field. And here we also have the logging option. So once before it gets loaded, let's switch to the Jira screen and let me create an issue. So this is the project that we have mapped, and this is the corresponding issue type, which is story. I'll start with the creation of a story. Just giving the title. I'll fill in the mandatory fields for creation of a story. And as I mentioned previously, the story can be related to SAP, can be integrated to SAP or not integrated to SAP. So to distinguish an SAP change or a non-SAP change, so you have this custom field. So this is going to be an SAP change only when you set this value to yes. So if I leave this value blank, you are not going to see the SAP transport tab as we saw in the screenshot. So I'll set this to yes, so that this is going to have the option to create a transport request. So the issue is created. And you have this custom tab, SAP transport. But you don't see any of the options. You don't see a create TR or any other options, just the refresh option is there because we only have the, okay, so here we have those transport requests which is listed. And as I said, for multi-select option, you can select all and click on import, which will import into the target environment. So we'll go to the mapping. So you will have the create TR option only when the issue is moved to selected for development. So this particular story is currently in backlog status. So that's why you don't see these options. So let me switch to this to selected for development and let the screen get refreshed.
And this is optional, but that's a control that gives the customer the opportunity to say that if a work item needs to be approved first before somebody on the SAP side gets to start working on it, right?
Exactly. So you can have all the buttons available in all the statuses. So to have a controllers for the compliance, you can have this as so again, as you mentioned, this is an optional configuration.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So this will ensure that not all users are able to create the transport or import the transport. It will only be based on the authorization to move issue status in Jira. So now you have the option. So the issue is selected for development, and you can see multiple options here. I'm going to create a transport request. So here, based on the landscape which I mapped to this particular Jira project, I'll be getting the development instance in the dropdown. So I'm selecting this development instance ECD client 001, and you can create the type of request you want. I'll select a customizing request. And for the request, you can select the owner. We are also providing a lookup option. If you do not know the SAP user ID, you can just fill in and search. So it will fetch dynamically the user list from the development system. So I'm giving my ID, and also you can add the tasks for individual users. If you want to have tasks added for multiple developers, you can do that here. So I just mentioned my ID here, added the task. And this is another feature which we have in here. For example, for some transport request, there could be some manual steps to be implemented or before or after the transport is imported into the system. So we are providing this option to ensure that the manual step is not skipped. Again, this is optional. If you do not want to select that, just leave it blank. Or if you want to do any manual step before the transport import or after the transport import, you can do it in here. So I'll select the before TR import, execute custom report, just making it up and save. So before this TR import, I have a manual step. So when I click on import TR, I'll be prompting to get a confirmation that the TR is or the manual step is performed. So I'll get a prompt. So if you click on this icon, you'll be seeing what are the details of the manual steps to be performed. So all the details for the creation of transport requests are maintained. And once I click on create, this should make a call to the central network system, which in turn will call the development environment and create a transport request. So that was quick. And you see here, the transport request is created, all the details maintained in here. And so we have a transport target group maintained for this particular environment. That's what you see in here. And once you select this transport, you can see the task number and what are the types, all the details are here. And let me go and open this transport in the system. So this is the transport request and the corresponding task. And let me release this particular task. So I leave it blank for the time being. So the task is released, and if you refresh, you'll be seeing that status as released. So you can see it's reflecting real time. The status of the task is now released, and the transport is still modifiable. And let's try to create a transport of copy for this particular transport request. So transport of copy option is available in progress status. So let's move this to in progress. So currently you don't see an option for creation of a TOC. So now this is in progress. Let's refresh the screen. So you will also be, so for each action you do from Jira or ServiceNow, you will also be seeing the related confirmation or comment in the comment section. So the transport creation which I performed, you can see the customizing transport request has been created and the transport details. And now you have the option create and import TOC. So you can select this particular transport request, and if I click on create and import TOC, this is going to create a transport of copy. And as I mentioned earlier, so we mentioned about having a custom report executed before importing of the transport request. So you get a confirmation. You get a pop-up to confirm that there is a manual step, and you need to acknowledge it before you proceed with the import. So I mentioned that it's acknowledged and safe. And only after that, the import, so it will create a transport request and it'll import into the nest environment in the landscape, which means into the test environment. So you will also be seeing the details of the transport of copy created, and there will also be a comment in the comment section. Looks like it's done. And you can see that TOC is created this TOC number and the naming convention TOC from this particular transport request, and the description is taken. And in the comment section, you can see import is successful. The TOC import is successful. So let me go back in here. Let's check that TOC in the system. So TOC, and if you check the import log, it's getting imported into the target environment ECQ. Now you have the TOC imported successfully, and if you want to import the original transport into the target environment, you can release this particular TR, and the release option is available in testing status. And after that, you can move to successfully tested and import it to the test environment. Move this to in testing so that I can release the original transport request. So you can see earlier the release option was not available, and as per the mapping, when I move to in testing, now you have the release transport option, release TR option. Once you click on this, it's going to release the transport request. And let's check the status of this transport in here. This was a transport, and it got released. The status is now released. And the last update, what was done, so the export from ECD, the development environment, the release is done. That's what you see here. And the status of transport request is released. Now, as the next step, we'll import this into the quality environment. So for that, I'll be moving this to successfully tested. So this is just a sample mapping based on your requirements, so whatever customization you have in the Jira workflow. You can select corresponding statuses and corresponding actions, or if you want to have the button available in all the statuses, that's also possible. Now this is successfully tested, and let me refresh. Also, as I mentioned, we have CSOL and DGP checks. And in the comment section, if you have any issue in the CSOL or DGP, that will also be mentioned. So you can see CSOL check during the release and import of transport request, the cross-system object lock and downgrade protections will be checked. So that check result will also be visible in the logs section here. And now I have the transport request released, and once I click on, I'm going to import this transport request into the next environment. Click on import TR. Again, it's asking for the manual step confirmation. Acknowledge it and click on save, and you'll get the import options here. So similar to what we have in standard SAP TMS import, and I'll just leave all those blank and import. If I go to STMS, we'll go to the corresponding environment. So you can see the transport got imported. There's the transport 1076, and it got imported. And you can see the same comment in here also in the tab, and also in the comment section, you'll be seeing that. And in case of a failure, that the error log will also be displayed here. Here RC is 0, return code is 0. That's why you don't see anything. Also, you can see the comment about downgrade protection is successful. There is no, it's an empty transport. So there are no objects to check. And if you have any object or if there is a conflict, that details will also be displayed in here. And now the TR is imported into the target environment ECQ. And the next is production. And once I move this to authorize for production based on, so whoever has access in your Jira workflow can move this to authorize for production status so that the import can be done in the production environment. select the transport request. The last imported system is EC2, which is the quality environment. And now I click on import TR again. Again, for each system, you have the manual step, acknowledge it and save. Leave the options blank, import. Let's go back to the production system. And this is waiting to be imported. And now the import is successful. So you can see the imports done, ECP, that's the production environment, the ECQ, that's also done. And in the comment section, you'll be able to see ECP system, it's imported, and this is the return code is 0. And that completes the cycle for the transport request. And as I mentioned, we also have multiple additional options. If you want to re-import a particular transport, you can do that. You can, in case of CSOL and DGP error, you can ignore the CSOL check and DGP check and override it and do the import. That's why you have this option. And based on the mapping that you choose, you will have other different options available within this particular tab. And if this SAP transportable change is set to no, this tab itself won't be visible for this particular issue, because this will be considered as a non-SAP change. So that's on a high level on the options that we have for the Jira connector. And let's switch to ServiceNow and see wherein we also have all the options what we've just seen in Jira. We'll quickly try a creation of a transport request from ServiceNow. So this is our ServiceNow demo environment. I'm going to create a new change request. And for ServiceNow, like in Jira, we saw a field called SAP Transportable Change. So in ServiceNow also we have a similar custom field which is called SAP Change. And here in the tabs list, you don't see the SAP Transport tab now. So only when you set this to yes, SAP Transport tab will be visible. If this value is no, SAP Transport tab will be hidden. So we'll set this to yes and then save. Here we have the mapping based on the mapping. So in new status, we have the create TR and create transport of create task option. I click on create TR. Similar to Jira, all the options, select the dev environment, select the same as ECD. Again, I'll create a workbench request this time. You have the search option for honors. It's taking a bit. 1 second. Similar to Jira, it will fetch the user details from SAP. So I added the task, I added the honor, and you also have the manual steps like what we saw in Jira. And I'm leaving empty for the time being. And all the details are maintained now. Click on create. This will trigger the creation of transport request, and similar to what we saw in Jira, you should be able to see the transport details within ServiceNow. So let's wait for it, and there you go. The transport request is created 1079. This is the transport request, and we have a similar structure for the details in Jira. You have the task number, and this is I created it as a workbench request, and all the details are here. So if I go back to SAP, and it's a workbench request 1079, all the task details are here. And based on what type you're going to store, what type of object you're going to save it in here, you can select the type. I just selected it as repair and releasing the task. And if I reload the page, you'll be able to see the task status as released. And if you want to have any additional task created, you can click on create task again. Looks like we have a bit of connectivity problem in there. Just reloading. Yeah, the page is getting unresponsive. There's some network connectivity issue. So we also have the option to create multiple transport requests. So not just, so it's not limited to one transport request per change. So if you want to create an additional transport request, that's also possible. So you can click on create TR again, and it's going to create a new TR. And you can select the same development environment. And this time I'll create a customizing request. Select the user IDs. And create. And the second transport request of type customizing is also created now. So if you go back, you can see the details, TR number 2 and customizing task. So you can create as many TRs as you want within a particular change request. And all the options, like I mentioned earlier, CSOL check, DGP, last import details, and all this information will also be available. And similar to Jira, you also have a section here where in the comments, you can see what all actions were done. And when a transport request is created or when the integration is initiated, all this information will also be available here. Here also we have the mapping options, the transport landscape creation, system creation, and all these options are also available within this. And that's on about the connector on the ServiceNow side. And before we wind up, we'll also go to see how it looks like on the Azure side. So in Azure DevOps also we have a connector wherein you need to deploy a plugin or extension for Azure. So once you deploy the extension, you'll be able to see the TMS connecting extension in your Azure DevOps instance. We have the connectivity mapping page mass import similar to what we have in Jira. You can select the landscape and add the systems as we saw in Jira. Connection test option you have, and then you can also define the mapping. So here we have the mapping to do, so the standard mapping what we have in Azure. Create TR, create and import TOC, import into production. So we just did a simple mapping. And within the work item, you will be seeing the options or buttons, the custom tab. So this is SAP transport tab. And here you can see all the buttons available here because we didn't do a detailed mapping for these. So that's why you're seeing all the buttons. And once you have the transport request created, you'll also be seeing that information within this particular tab. So you can see customizing and workbench transport request and the details. And that's all about the demo what we have. If you have any questions, please mention in the chat. We'll be able to answer those now.
Thank you, Sajid. It looks amazing. I've seen this demo a few times, but it never gets old for me. Just the ability to directly control transports from all these different tools. And those are the tools that people are using mostly to manage their changes. So it's really great. Yeah. We did have a question regarding installation. You talked a little bit at the beginning about the different components that are required to get this to work. You don't need ServiceNow, you don't need Solution Manager, you don't need Charm, any of that, but how long does it take to get the installation done and the tools up and running?
So Steve, ideally, you, as mentioned, you can have the deployment done for Jira, ServiceNow, or Azure DevOps. And in the solution managed system, we'll be providing you a plugin or an external transport in core ALM namespace, which needs to be not for the solution manager. I meant to say, whichever landscape you are going to implement this. In that environment, you need to import our connected transport or into the network system, which I mentioned, if you're going for a centralized deployment. And we also have to deploy the plugin in your Jira instance or ServiceNow instance or Azure DevOps instance, which one you're going to choose. And so the main thing is about having the connectivity between these systems, between ServiceNow and SAP, or between Jira and SAP. So if you have the connectivity in place, and once you deploy it, the entire deployment and configuration will take maximum 2 or 3 days, not more than that.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Amazing. Okay. Next question was around just the segregation of duties. So I noticed that you said that you can map which buttons appear based on the current status that you have in the various systems. And then I assume that if those users that are logging into, let's say, Jira or ServiceNow, Azure DevOps, if you want to, you can restrict access to who actually sees those controls based on their user login ID. Is that right? How does that get handled?
Exactly, Steve. You're right. So based on so if you must be having the workflow customization on the Jira side, and based on the workflow or segregation of duties, not all users will be able to move a particular issue in Jira to a particular status, or in ServiceNow, not all users will be able to move a change to implement status. So the connector will be adapting to this only when, so based on the mapping, if you have the import option only available, say in implement status in Jira, for example. So only those users who are able to move that to implement status, or click on, or you have access to the stories in implement status, will be able to click on the import. In addition, we also have the authorization check in the backend system, whether the user is able to have, whether the user is having authorization to create or import the transport in SAP. So that check is also there. So thus we ensure that it's compliance with whatever workflow or segregation of duties you have in the organization.
Perfect. So there's actually 2 checks at the front end and at the back end as well,
Exactly.
to prevent unauthorized. Because I know lots of our customers, they don't want somebody to create and import their own changes. That prevents kinds of issues in production, and usually is against the compliance rules. So
yeah, and
perfect.
in test environment, you also have the option to bypass this if you do not want to have. And so, for example, in the dev environment or test environment, you may need to just do the testing, and you may not want to impose this restrictions. So you can just set the configuration. It's a configurable option whether you want to have a check on the backend or not. So that's also possible.
Okay, fantastic. Sujeet, thank you very much for walking us quickly through those various systems to do the demonstration. Thank you all for attending. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. The easiest way is to go to our website at corealm.com. Go to the top right-hand corner of your screen and click on Talk to an Expert. And then you can fill out the form. It'll come directly to us, and we will reach out and we can schedule a time to meet with you and answer your questions. Also, please scan the barcode that's on your screen right now, or go to the resource page on our CoreALM website, and you can register for additional webinars. We have lots of different topics that we are continuing to present. So some exciting upcoming discussions on various Tricentis applications, including Live Compare and Tosca. So yeah, please do join us for those. Thanks for taking your time today, and if you're watching the recording, thanks for getting to the end, and do reach out if you have any further questions. Thank you all, and thanks, Chief. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all. Have a good day.